There's so many more things I want to do, hobbies I can't get to because I just don't have the time. That's the absolute truth. I would say one of the biggest frustrations I have day to day that drives my wife up the wall is I get frustrated that I can't do more things. I don't have more time to practice a second language, to learn the guitar, to learn magic, all the little things I just like to learn and know this stuff. I get a dopamine hit every time I complete something or learn something I didn't know before. I come off these webinars and these courses and I'm way better. I'm in a really good spot. I get that dopamine hit and it kind of lasts until the next thing.
Evening, Nick. How are we doing today?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Yeah, very well. Very well. You're looking bright. You've got better lighting than me. I think you've got a nice bright light on your face there.
I've got the tan lighting going on. But and also I actually bought a bunch of new light bulbs last week from the Black Friday sale. These expensive ones, which are different phases of the day. So it's actually quite clever because you just click it on and off and it will change phase. You don't need a remote control or anything like that. And it will do a daylight bulb, then it will do like a late evening bulb, and then a nighttime bulb, all within the same bulb. So I'm experimenting with different light bulbs. So that's also
any good.
But I do recommend them actually. It makes the evenings a lot nicer. So
they must be light sensitive, are they? They can see the light and then they change accordingly, or are they time dependent?
No. They're set. So literally you would turn on the switch at the wall or wherever, and it will be one setting, then turn it on and off, we'll go to the next setting, turn it on and off, and go to the next setting. So it cycles through, and actually really good because it's very kind of low tech, but really effective. So in the morning in the gym, I'll have the bright light on, and in the evening, like I was just now, I'll have like the twilight light on, so it's not so intense.
So without even realizing it, we actually have this in our house, in my son's bedroom. I didn't know. I bought a bulb, not knowing it came with whatever. And I have to keep flicking through the settings to get the right lamp when he goes to bed, which is different when he wakes up. So it sounds like the same thing. They're pretty handy. Cool.
So I bought that recently on a Black Friday, but also then I bought another massive infrared light panel. Are you familiar with those? I think you've seen them in my house, but I've got these big infrared light and red light panels. So
you just kind of stand or sit in front of it, don't you? Or meditate in front of it.
Yeah. And because I always have one now where I'm washing up in the morning so that I can wake up in the mornings, I also want one in the gym. So, and I like to have two so I can have it hitting me from both angles anyway. So
there you go. A couple of things. My side then, Black Friday, I've bought a concoction of a 5-blend mushroom
nice
concoction I've started to take, which is quite interesting. See how that goes. I'll monitor the benefits. So that's new. Got that at a Black Friday deal. And talking of DIY, in my haste as always, I ran into a project. Thought I'd put change my my upstairs studio around and create a better sort of podcasting environment than this one, so a new one. And drilling into the wall, I went straight into a radiator pipe. It was 1 centimetre behind the plasterboard and flooded the space. Had to get an emergency plumber out. The whole thing. I turned the water supply off. It obviously didn't stop the water because it was based on the combi boiler. And it's good. I got a nice call out bill. Sunday call out. Out he comes. I did a brilliant job, to be fair. Really good guy. So I'll give him a shout out because he was excellent. But not the way I was intending to spend my Sunday. And then straight after doing that, Lucy called me, who'd been in London for the day, and all the trains were cancelled for her getting home due to this storm that we're having. So then I had to go and pick her up from the station as well. So I lost pretty much my whole day trying to do a good thing in DIY and causing loads of hell. I've now got a huge, 30 by 30 centimetre square hole in my wall.
What's DIY stand for again?
Do it yourself.
Destroy it yourself.
Yeah. Destroy it yourself. Yeah. Listen, to be fair, the plumber said to me, this could have happened to anyone. He gets these call outs all the time. There was no casing around the tubes. They don't get picked up by wall thing because they're plastic tubing. So it was, and literally it was like 1 centimetre behind the board. So anyway, the water started going everywhere. Leo running downstairs while Leo plugs the hole, trying to turn the water supply off, which made no difference because it was off the combi boiler, and had to basically let the water go until the pressure dropped and flooded everything. So. And now Lucy came back from her trip in London to see a 30 by 30 centimetre hole in our spare bedroom wall. So entertaining.
She's probably afraid to leave you alone.
Well, it probably links. Maybe. I don't know how I could have done this differently, but you said yesterday you wanted to talk about slowing down a little, and I'm always 100 miles an hour. Lucy went away for the weekend. So I thought, right, she's away. I can now get on with all these zillion jobs I've got to do. And Lucy said, this is absolutely true. She said to me on Friday it was, she said, you're one of these people who's always there's no half in for you. It's all in or not at all, which actually she finds quite frustrating, because I will wait till the washing up, for example, is overflowing and I'll get it done. Or there's so many clothes that need washing that I'll then do it in one go, as opposed to sort of dripping it, doing a little bit here and there. That's not me. I'm all in or all out. And I guess that's something she probably finds a little bit frustrating.
I mean, that's, I guess, kind of, so I guess where I came from with this, the art of slowing down, or the art of doing less, is, so last week we were trying to meet for the podcast. Now we got a little bit of confusion on the Monday or the Tuesday. No, Monday I was flying back, wasn't I? So Monday I was flying back. So we said it was on the Tuesday, and then didn't work because we didn't really confirm it. And then we were trying to fix it in, and we were trying to maybe do the Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it was. And at the same time, I had come straight from Barcelona, 1:00 in the morning, had to drive to Southend the next morning, 4 days on the trot. And then I also had a friend over from Colombia, and they were trying to meet up with me on the Wednesday or the Thursday. And I was getting to that point where I was like, there's just too much happening, right? And I really want to manage my energy when I work a lot, but at the same time, I'm recognizing the fact that you can't just be doing work, right? Especially, that's going to be the foreseeable future for the next 4 weeks, where I'm going to have 4 quite intense weeks. But I said, no. Or I also then put some criteria. So I said, like, I can't come and meet you in town, but if you want to, come over to mine, we'll have some dinner, and then I can drop you back at the station later, because, I want to make sure I want to be in bed by 10. So there's no way I want to come into town, meet you at 8:00, and then have an hour and then come back or something like that. It doesn't make sense. And so I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, because a lot of time people do rush, and you did spring to mind, because you are someone that is operating at 100 miles an hour, right? I remember you were, at one point, you were writing your play, you were doing, I guess, coaching certification for something. You're doing a master's. You obviously have a very successful business, but 3 podcasts, including this. God knows what else on, as well as, at the time it was 2 dogs. I guess maybe now 1 dog, 2 children, wife. And I'm just thinking, there's not an off switch for you, which might be the case. Now, you might argue differently, which is why I'm curious, and that's why I wanted to engage with that conversation, because
actually I wouldn't argue
where that
differently.
desire comes from, and and if you were to try and slow it, like, what would be the detriment for you just to say, I'm not going to do anything now, I'm just going to work and be with the kids? Like, how would that make you feel, or how would that drive you? And not be able to do your training. I think I do have you train massively.
I do, yeah. So just to bring that last question into context, because as a conversation, like, I do have that time when I'm with my kids. I'm 100% for my kids. I'm a big believer in, when you're doing something, give it 100% all the time, and that should be your focus. And I try not to. I think that's a bit why Lucy says you all in. Like, I won't, if I'm with the kids, I'll try not to be with the kids whilst trying to do something else. And we've talked about this briefly on the show before. So if I'm on the podcast, I'm 100% into the podcast. And, if I'm doing football or whatever, I'm 100% into that task. So I can do those things. I think going back to your question is, what do we like to do? Nothing. That I definitely struggle. I'm just not, it's not comfortable for me doing nothing. I just like being busy. I've never been someone that's really ever got bored. I just, there's always something that I want to learn, want to better, want to do, want to read, want to watch, want to see, want to experience. And the idea of sitting down, and I know there's, like Lucy would say, like, you need to just sometimes just sit down and reflect and enjoy, and be right. And I will do that for 5 minutes with her, and then she'll open her eyes, and I'll be somewhere else in the garden doing something else, if we're outside, or we're on holiday. 5 minutes later, I'll be running into the or whatever. I just don't know. I mean, I'm not scared of it. I think what you said is, you're absolutely right.
A question is to you: is doing nothing doing nothing? That's the question. Is doing nothing actually doing nothing?
No, it's not doing nothing. It goes back to the argument of, even when you are, so if you're training and you want to be the best you can be, then when you're recovering, you should be 100% focused on recovery. That is, I'm doing nothing with a deliberate intention of doing nothing, because I'm in that recovery mode. I think for me, though, I still need that label to say, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. So the idea of just going outside and sitting on a sun lounger while the sun's out because I can, doesn't really come into my thinking. I need Lucy, my wife, to say, hey, take 5 minutes. There's always something that I would rather be doing, experiencing, learning, whatever, than the idea of going outside and sitting down and doing nothing is alien. Although I understand your concept is nothing doing nothing. No, it's not. You're always doing something. You're resting, you're recuperating, you're experiencing, you're reflecting, but they're not the things that I would choose to do first. Whereas for other people, it would be. For my wife, the minute the sun's out, she would choose to go outside and get as many rays as possible. She loves the sunshine. For me, I can do that. I'm aware that I could. It would never occur to me to do that in the first instance.
I guess
just
beyond that question of in the moment, like doing that nothing. But what I mean is, I guess less so than doing nothing, but more having no projects on. So let's just say, are you able to ever have an evening where there's no agenda, or a weekend when there's no agenda, or a phase of your life, like a month or two of your life, where you haven't got, a study masters to study for, or some project out? Because I know that you do get into things massively, right? I remember we were talking about that video gaming that you were going to do with your mate, right? And you go straight in, you buy the thing, you do all that, and then poof, doesn't go anywhere because you decided against it in the end. But I feel like you're someone that, because like with your training, you always need to train for a next race. It's always the next thing, which reminds me very much of the stories I hear of all these like successful astronauts, right? Who have all these goals, and it's got to get the next goal, the next thing. So is there ever like a month or 2 month period where you don't have anything but work and family, I guess? And how would that make you feel?
No, there isn't. And you know what? It's interesting. There probably should be. Even right now, let's call this as a snapshot in time as to where I am right now. So we've been recording slightly earlier because I've undertaken my coaching badges for the FA, so that I can coach my son's under 11s football team, of which the last session of that is after this podcast tonight. So I'll be working till late doing my coaching webinars and things like that, so I can get certified. But typically, as this is as a a little example, I don't need to do the coaching course to do the thing for my kids. All I need is my safeguarding. But I don't want to stop at safeguarding. So since the coaches at my local football club turned around and said, would you like to be part of it? I've now done my disabilities course. I've done coaching level 1. I've done several other voluntary courses. I just want to be the best I can possibly be in that moment. The self-funded, take up my time. I really enjoy the learning. But I don't need to do any of those things. It's just my character. Funny enough, tomorrow I've just signed up to another course where I'm doing AI for business leaders, which is a 10-week program. So that starts tomorrow. Sessions are 6:15 to 9:15 every Tuesday. So that's going to take up my time. I've also, my latest hobby is, like, as you know, I've always been a fan of cooking, but I've gone into a whole different level. So I've ordered loads of the gastronomic things you can do. So I'm, doing foams and gels and dehydrating food. And again, that comes with more gadgets and stuff. I don't know where, and I order the books and the learnings to teach myself that. I've got myself a teaching course that I'm teaching myself. So all weekend when Lucy was away, I've been batch cooking and experimenting and doing stuff. The fridge is full of food that we'll probably never get through in the next 3 days, but I've just had fun cooking it. I don't know where it comes from, Harry. It's just
all for continuous lifelong learning. I'm all for continuous lifelong learning. I guess the question is not whether it's a good idea or not to be doing that or to be being busy. It's about whether it's, I don't want to use the word addiction, but whether it's a compulsion, whether it's it feels like to me that it's something that you really can't do without. You can't do without the busyness.
I think it probably is an addiction. My wife would say I'm addicted to work. I don't necessarily classify all of those things as work. It's definitely a compulsion. I don't know where it comes from. It doesn't really occur to me. It's not even an inner calling. It just seems like, for me, like the natural order of things. I finished that course. I now have some free time. Oh, I quite fancy getting involved in this. And when I get involved in something, I'm in it like 100%. That's the problem. If you call it a problem in inverted commas, like I want to coach my son's team and help the team out, and I want to be the best one I can be. And so why would I not? It doesn't make sense to me that I wouldn't do every course accessible to me to be a better person in that role. So rather than do the bare minimum, I go as far as I can possibly go. I am going to stop at the UEFA C licenses, which are like 2-year programs away. There is a limit. But while they're accessible, it's a 4-week program or a 6-week program or whatever. I just think, why not? Like, it's no one else even needs to know that I've done them. It's just for me and
No.
my own inner self going,
Well, I
you
don't
know,
think
I
you do
can be a
them.
more accomplished, rounded coach.
I don't think you do them for the reward of other people. I guess for me, the way I see it as an analogy is I feel like sometimes when people are continually doing that, if you imagine a car, it's revving up to like 6,000 RPM, and it's kind of staying there the whole time rather than allowing it to go back to like 1,500 RPM to kind of coast and stuff. And I think at times you need to put the accelerator down, at times you need to kind of like coast it and stuff, otherwise the car burns out, right?
Yeah.
And this is, I guess, the question of the podcast today is the art of slowing down and achieving more by doing less. And I remember there was a speech competition I did maybe 10, 12 years ago. And I think the theme was, and the speeches all had to be around of achieving more by doing less. I think it was something like that. And
Yeah.
I think I did a speech about my time in Vipassana and meditation and this idea of self-introspection and slowing down. And I think I'm the opposite right now because I don't know that I've got many projects on the go. And when I'm working and then just focused on recovery a lot and just to kind of manage my energy. But I have had periods where, as you know, right, so I did a master's for a bit, but then I will not do anything for like 6 months or longer. Then I'll maybe do something else. And whereas I feel like with you, it's almost like they're almost continually either, like you say, you're finishing one today, you're starting one tomorrow. And I'm just wondering whether you think that is, do you feel like you're running at 6,000 RPM or 5,000 RPM, or do you feel like that's just your normal way of being and your 5,000 is now what you perceive that as a 2,000 RPM?
I'll try to answer the question. So I think if there are more hours in the day, I would like to go from 6,000 to 8,000 RPM is the truth. There's so many more things I want to do, hobbies I can't get to because I just don't have the time. That's the absolute truth. I would say one of the biggest frustrations I have day to day that drives my wife up the wall is I get frustrated that I can't do more things. I don't have more time to practice a second language, to learn the guitar, to learn magic, all the little things little things I've tried to do, to pick locks or whatever it is. I just like to learn and know that stuff, not for anyone's benefit. So I get frustrated that there aren't more hours to do these things. I think for me, where we probably differ here, and everyone is different, I think addiction is probably not too far far off the point, really. I get a dopamine hit every time I complete something or learn something I didn't know before. As someone who has gambled in the past, and I've kind of quit that now, but I know what that feels like. And at the end of that, you get that little dopamine hit now and again. But the dopamine hit for learning is something that's far greater than the gambling high I got. So I come off the courses like the FA course. And to be fair, it's a really simple. It doesn't particularly challenge you, in terms of complexity but you're still learning, you're still listening to other people's views, it's adding to my toolkit or whatever, and my awareness of what's going on. I come off these webinars and these courses to Lucy and I'm way better. I'm in a really good spot. I get that dopamine hit and it kind of lasts until the next thing. What I did discover, and maybe this is unfair, but when I lost my dad recently, as you know, we both lost them. I lost a lot of my mojo to learn or do anything. Now, of course, that's a stage of grief. What I do know is I felt completely lost, and I really struggled actually, I found it really difficult to do anything. And losing that sense of me in that experience, and it's I'm still going through the grieving process. It was still less than a year ago, but losing it for me, I lost a lot of the sense of who I was. And maybe we didn't talk about that too much on the show at the time. We talked all about the loss and the sadness, but actually, I lost a lot of who I was because I lost, for the first time since I can ever remember, I lost my mojo for learning. I lost my mojo for training. I lost my mojo for a lot of things. I felt quite vulnerable, very emotional, and quite lost. So now that I'm starting to get this stuff back, I think I'm probably overcompensating by taking on more courses than I probably should. But I feel so much better in myself. I'm getting the dopamine hits of learning. I feel more like the Nick that I want to be, to try and better myself for me and for my family. I feel like I can impart more of my enthusiasm to my kids. I can give more to my children. So I think, long story short, for some, the projects I'd take on would be draining. It'd be depleting their batteries because it's too much. For me, it feels my battery back up. It fills my energy level up. So I need that, and actually makes me a better parent, in my opinion, there to be challenged, because when I've done these things, I'm not worried about what I haven't done in the day. Instead, I can be fully present with my kids, going, well, I've achieved that. Now it's 100% about you. And I take my son to different clubs 6 days of the week. And the other day I have free, I do something with my daughter. So, I feel like it's better for me in that space. And when I haven't got those things, I really struggle to get motivated. I struggle to feel like an inspiration or a good role model or any of those things really for my kids. So I think it's very much a personal experience for everyone. For some, it would be taking stuff away. For me, it's adding.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think like learning, you were talking about you're constantly learning that dopamine hit that you get, and learning education. I mean, it's a part of the beat model. I've got my mug here with my beat model sign on here, and it's under the brain bit, right? Education, but also we've got tranquility as well. So it's kind of balancing those things out. But I have a phrase, one of my acronyms that I use, ABLE, ABLE, which is always be learning and evolving. And the E3 baby mindset, which is explore, evolve, and enjoy. And I think that's what babies tend to do. And I think we do at some point lose that, I guess, that curiosity and that desire to learn and grow new things. And sometimes even I was thinking about it, because I'm thinking, I think I was looking at lots of adverts about AI this, or I think I was watching an Intel laptop advert yesterday, and it was talking about AI, this AI chip that they've got in the, like, they're putting AI to everything now because it just sounds good. And
in a minute, I should show you my desk.
Let AI take care of your calendar and this, that, and the other. And part of me is just sitting here thinking, I don't really know if I want to learn more stuff. And I'm thinking, hang on a second, that sounds like my parents and my grandparents, where it's like, I don't want to learn how to use a mobile phone. I know how to use, like, call up and speak to the operator and get them to find a number for me. And I'm like, you got to evolve with the times. And I sometimes catch myself and I'm thinking, hang on a second, is this me aging, or is it me? And I've talked about this, or I've joked about this many times, where I feel like I'm becoming, with technology, more and more of a Luddite. And, maybe you'll find me living in a cave by myself in 20 years time. I don't know, because I feel like there's a lot to be said for stillness. There's a lot to be said for being comfortable without stuff and without things to be constantly on the go. And even this afternoon coming back, my mum's away at the moment, and as some of the listeners might know, when I'm in London, I live with my mum. And the last few weeks I've been coming back from work, and I come back and there's someone in the house, and she'll have the TV on as well. And I didn't kind of recognize just how much that maybe affects me. I mean, I sort of do, because I ask her to turn it off when I get in usually. But when I came in today, obviously it was quiet. I put the lights on the setting that I want to put on. I was able to do everything. And that's actually why I was able to get quite a few things done before our call today, because I felt a bit of peace. I didn't have noise on me, and I had that stillness, and I was able to focus. And so this is why I think the art of doing less, sometimes you achieve more. And that joke, we've mentioned it before, right? If you haven't got, the old adage is, you should meditate for like 20 minutes a day. And then the guy says, I don't have 20 minutes. He goes, well, you should meditate for an hour then.
Longer.
And it's very much that, I think, is that sometimes we feel like we have to be busy all the time. But I feel like sometimes by slowing down, stopping, you can see what you really need to get done. And going back to one of the metaphors you like using, that snow globe metaphor, and maybe I can twist it a little bit, but the busyness is that shaking of the snow globe, and then you can't see what you need to see, right? And then you stop and you slow down, and suddenly things fall into place, and you go, actually, did I need to be doing all these other things anyway? And could I have just been focusing on the one thing that I needed to do? And sometimes if we're go, we can't see all of that. And so I guess that's where the title of the idea for today's podcast was.
I think I agree with a lot of things you've said. I think I'm a big believer in slowing down, like slow down to speed up. I say this lots to my coaching clients. Sometimes you've got to slow down to speed up. Take a moment to, often that'll lead to greater productivity. It allow you to have better focus, to reflect, find clearer thinking. I think I'm one of these people that doesn't always do that enough. And I think there's something where it becomes dangerous, if that's the right word, is my want to always be busy. I think, and whether it doesn't always have to be learning. I like to be busy. I feel like I thrive under that stress curve we talked about before. That part of the stress curve, which is almost at the bell curve point, but just underneath where I feel like I really thrive. That's where I like to be. Sometimes if I take on too much, it comes distress, and sometimes I have to step back. And I have suffered burnout a couple of times. I've changed my career a couple of, the way that I managed my business a couple of times, not my career, in the way of stepping back from certain activities where they got too much. I sought my own coach, as you know, when it got too much. When my son stopped coming in and saying, "Dad, can you play with me?" And because he gave up because I was always too busy. So it has a downside, the yin and the yang to it. And I think the main bad side to it really is when you are always want to be busy, you tend to be impulsive, and that can lead to bad decision making. So I've done that a few times. I've taken or spent money or bought a gadget or taken on a course, and then halfway through I've gone, "Why have I done this? I've committed now to this." And being who I am, I have to finish it and see it to the end, even if I'm not very good at stopping something. I think the only thing I've ever given up was an autobiography. Bill Clinton's autobiography. I gave up on that book. That's the only thing. It stings true because literally I think it's the only thing I've ever not finished ever.
No,
I just couldn't. I gave up on it. But I've done I did a master's in professional consulting, but I felt like I was learning nothing in doing the course because I'd done as an entrepreneur and a business owner for 20 years. I felt what I was learning I'd already knew, but I still had to complete the course, and it was these hours of doing essays and things. I was like,
it's a psychological phenomenon, isn't it? I can't. What's it called? Sunken cost or something like that, where you'll. I was actually watching a very minor clip of The Big Bang Theory the other day, and it was an episode where Sheldon was asking for, I think, 20 million to build something to prove his theory, and the guy said, "Okay, so it only cost us 20 million to do this," and he goes, "No. I'll need 50 million. He goes, "Oh, what? So really the real figure is 50 million?" He goes, "No, but 50 million is easier to get to the 80 million." And it's like, because once you've committed that 20, you're going to go to the 50, you're going to go to the 80. And it's the same with human nature.
There's the gambler in me, right?
Once
it's called being on tilt.
Sorry?
It's called being on tilt if you're a gambler. You chase your losses.
Okay,
you keep chasing.
And actually, I think my first ever blog post that I wrote on my website years ago was about procrastination. It's called the Zeigarnik effect, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with or not, but it's I can't remember where the name comes from, but I remember reading about the study that this woman was investigating how waiters could remember the order of all these tables, right? What they'd ordered and stuff up to the moment they'd paid. And then when they paid, they suddenly really couldn't remember the orders because they had an vested interest up to that point. And essentially when they released that, they released the kind of stress of having to remember all that things. And effectively what that can be useful for procrastination is the idea, which I think we've talked about before, where if you want to tidy your house, you don't aim to tidy the house. You aim to tidy the tiniest corner of the smallest room of your house. And then you do that, and then you feel obligated to somewhat tidy the rest of the room. And then that grows and grows. And it's the same thing. It's this idea of, I guess, similar idea of sunken cost, where you've committed a certain level into your degree or into your book, and you feel like, oh, I've got to finish it. Now, I used to be like that as well. And actually, now I have several books unfinished because I used to see it as I've wasted the time that I've spent if I don't finish it. Whereas now I see it as I'm wasting additional time. I'm pouring good time after bad, if that makes sense. And so I've come to
it makes total sense. I could probably listen to that.
I'll just get out of a book what I need to get out of it in the first chapter or in that 2 chapters, and I'll stop. So
I think some of it's personal, though. I'll show you my desk in a minute. I'll bring it up to the camera for those watching, but I'll get there in a moment. There were a couple of things I was thinking when you were talking before about the way that I approach things versus the way that you do, whether I stop. So even when we had Eva, she's 15 years old now, when she was born, we said, we need to get some nice baby shots done. So my initial reaction is that we shopped around as anyone would, looked at photographers, and we didn't have much money in those days. So it was like, okay, that's going to cost X, Y, and Z. I found a baby photography course that was cheaper than the photographer. So instead of booking the photographer, which obviously would have given a better product, I put myself through a baby photography course and did a 6-week course on how to become a better photographer. You focusing on baby, and all the pictures I took were obviously was Eva as my. That's then later on. I think we spoke on the podcast. I did my first Ironman. I went and saw a sports nutritionist. She'd never done a triathlon before, and I thought it was kind of strange. And the advice she gave me, I thought, was actually very expensive for what I'd discovered. So I was like, well, I'm never going to spend that money again, but I still want to understand it. So I undertook a sports nutrition course, which was the best part of 6 months worth of training on sports nutrition, which is my nutritional background. I think there are certain things where I go, actually, I don't want to spend the money and go and do that thing. Not because I'm tight with spending money in those places, but I think actually these are things I can do myself, and then I have the skills for life rather than have to outsource it again and again.
Mm.
So you were talking about the AI piece. It's funny because you said you're becoming maybe more of a Luddite and you're coming away from it. And there'll be times where people really, really, and probably I'll be one of those that are envious of that lifestyle because we get so pulled the other direction that sometimes you crave, or you think you crave, that silence and that doing nothing. So all the time, Harry, I often think I wish I had more time just to relax. But when I get that time, I never relax. So in reality, it's not really what I want. It's what I think I want. But interestingly, on my desk, I'll go show you now. These are some books. I did this course. It's just me a whole Saturday last weekend. Python for beginners. So this allows me to code and create my own AI systems, followed by machine learning for absolute beginners, which is course number 2. I've also undertaken several online qualifications and basic programming skills for Python, not because I ever plan to be an AI developer, programmer, or anything like that. But if I'm working with these people in my business life, I want to have a better understanding for
that's
me
fair enough
to know what it's about. But I don't know. I don't have to do these things. Most people wouldn't. They just outsource it. I just feel like I want to have a little bit of an understanding, knowledge, or whatever. And it's just something inside me. But then I wish I hadn't lost 6 hours of my Saturday learning Python, because I've gone through the course and I realize at the end of it, probably don't need what I've learned. I think, that was potentially a waste, as you put it earlier, with that kind of sunken loss.
I mean, at least you know now. I guess you know, but I mean, I think I was a bit more like that maybe 5-10 years ago, and I feel like even now, my addiction with learning tends to be around podcasts for the last sort of 7 or 8 years, and probably 9 years actually. And I'm getting to that point where I'm like, I don't want any more information. I just don't want any more information. It's too much overload. And sometimes I'm thinking to myself, is the consumption of information a substitute for acting on the information you already know, or exploring your own kind of dimension? I guess it's hard to put into words, but I guess is it a substitute for something else by this constant need to consume? It's a consumer mindset in a way where we're always wanting to consume,
I agree.
consume. And I'm just wondering whether
probably
there's a different way of doing it.
Probably. I do know that if I was to retire tomorrow, the actions and the things I learned would change quite significantly. I certainly
if you were to retire tomorrow,
I certainly wouldn't be learning Python for beginners, as an example. I couldn't really care about the emergence or how that evolves too much, or as much, because it wouldn't be what I'd want to do next. But I would still be learning, but I'd be on the golf course, so I'd be learning guitar or learning magic or do all the other things I've always inside me wanted to learn. But they're all kind of things for me that give me joy. So I know I take on a lot of courses and things that I probably don't need to do. A 10-week course starting tomorrow. Hopefully it's going to be beneficial for my business, or I wouldn't have undertook it. But maybe I could have got someone else to do that course rather than it be me that did it. And maybe there's a little bit something in there to analyze. I don't know. It seems natural to me that it's a business leaders for AI course. I want to get ahead of the curve, from an entrepreneurial perspective, and hopefully that's going to enable me to do that. But obviously there's a time commitment, there's a cost. The cost is 3 hours every Tuesday now. I won't be finishing work till best part of 10 o'clock in the evening, and my kids would be in bed. So
do you think all of this is there to fill a space or a void of some sort? Because it feels like you haven't got any space to fill, because like you said, if you had 26 hours in a day, you still wouldn't have enough time. If you had 30 hours in a day, you probably still wouldn't have enough time. And so I guess it's a common trait amongst high performing people, and I would consider you to be one of the more high performing people I know personally in my circle. And from what I understand, some people might consider me to be in that bucket, but it's all relative, right? We've talked about relativity before, right? Everything's relative to where that person is, and you'll see other people that maybe you interview on your other podcasts who are even more higher achievers, I guess. But it's a trait that I've seen come through in high achieving people that I've seen, is that constant need to fill a gap, to fill space, to do stuff. And Another reason why I'm asking this is actually, on a side note, I went to a BAFTA screening on the weekend on Saturday, another BAFTA screening. I can't remember. I've been to two since I saw you. The first
Yeah,
one was
you
the
told me.
Q&A with Denzel Washington. I'm not sure if I
Yeah,
mentioned it or not. But this one was with Pamela Anderson. So obviously you probably used to watch Baywatch back in the 90s as well, I'm
I
sure.
did. Yeah, yeah.
We all did. A billion people did. So I'm sure you were one of those. And she's going to be starring in a movie called The Last Showgirl. Comes out in February. So we had an early screening, Q&A with her and everything. And she's probably gone, I guess, AWOL from acting. I guess her career didn't really take off after Baywatch and a couple of failed movies. But really, I think she spent the last 20 years effectively like raising her sons, living on a farm in Canada, from what I understand. And then I was thinking about a couple of other movie stars. Like I think Michelle Pfeiffer recently came back to movies after a long hiatus from movies. A couple of other actresses along that kind of 90s era that, settled down. They had the families, they stepped away and then have come back. And that's what kind of prompted me as well with this, is that, this idea of slowing down, and they've slowed down and they seem to have really enjoyed their life away from the busyness of having to do something in the public eye or having to work or something like that. And so I guess that's what it also stems from, is that this idea of, taking time away and coming back better. And if you don't ever take time away, if you don't ever slow down, like any professional athlete, right? If they don't rest, they don't have an off season. You see an aging athlete like Roger Federer in his last couple of seasons. I believe he just went for the Grand Slams, right? He didn't go for all the ones in between because he knew he had to manage his energy. And I'm just wondering whether someone in your position, do you have that self-awareness,
my wife.
energy to kind of manage all that?
You know my wife, right? And so I think she'd probably be a better person to probably have this conversation. And if you and I are having this pub, I'd probably say this in a pub, I'd have the same thing. She would argue probably, and I would challenge it, that she wishes I was just a little bit more content with where we are and what we do, and I'm always striving for more. I don't know how much of this is primal, Harry, if I'm honest. How much this is just a real back to basics hunter gatherer part in me that's innate to say I feel like I've got worse as I've had kids. That's for sure. And I don't know if that's, in theory, you'd think, using the Pamela Anderson example, maybe it would get better. You want to spend more time with them. And I fight really hard. I haven't, for anyone listening, it may come across wrong. I spend an awful lot of time with my children, taking them to clubs. Don't miss a single football game Leo goes to, or training, or all these different things. But I've got, as you say, there's balance. But of course, if that, in theory, that should just be enough. So it means I don't need all the other stuff, would be her point of view. But I don't know. There's a bit of me that's just, I have this inner wish to want to keep pushing and pushing. And my wife will say, "You're always pushing. You're just always pushing." I just want to, I don't know what that's for. I don't know what the end goal is. It just feels completely natural to be that way. I don't think there's a gap I'm filling. Maybe there is, and maybe a psychologist would challenge me on it, but I don't feel like there's a gap I'm trying to plug. I just feel like that's what is innately where I am. And I'm sure, I mean, you're a little bit older than me. When I get a little bit older, maybe that'll shift a little bit. Maybe I'll achieve more, or my daughter will go to university, and with less kids, maybe I will ease down. I suspect I probably will.
I think it'll be the other way. I think it'll be the other way, because when you'll have more time as they get older and start to fly the nest, as it were, you'll have more time. And actually, I think it's a good thing to a certain degree. So, for example, my mum, she's actually been quite busy. She's joined various clubs. There's a grief cafe that she goes to. There's a knitting club that she goes to, a walking club now that she's going to, learning French again. So I think like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, she's got something on every day, which is good, because the challenge a lot of time, and to play devil's advocate here, is the challenge that a lot of parents, from what I understand, have, is that they do self-identify with being a parent, being a mother, being a father, and put their lives really all into their kids, and rightly so to a certain degree. But then when those children become in their 20s, 30s, or whatever, fly the nest, or how do they see themselves? What do they do with their time? Or when they retire, if your whole life is about your career, what do you do once that's taken away from you? Because you're so identified with that if you don't have any outside interests. And I've been really watching this series called Industry, and it brings me back. It's a bit like a Succession type thing in that I actually hate most of the characters in there. I don't think they're very nice people. A lot of them, like kind of sociopaths and psychopaths and whatever else. But it reminded me a little bit of when I used to work in the city to some degree, even though I didn't work in proper financial services. But it's all about graduates joining this fictitious investment bank. And, a couple of them have been there for like 30 years. They're like the bosses of these graduates and stuff. And they have nothing beyond that space. And when the bank is going to go into turmoil and stuff, they struggle, I think, because that's so wrapped up in who they are.
Yeah.
So it is really good to have these other things that you've got, because I feel like if you were to retire tomorrow, you'd have no problems. I think you'd be like,
no.
You'd
love it.
You'd be loving
happily.
it. Like you'd be on the West End doing magic or something like that, like busking outside.
Probably, mate. I've given myself a 5-year challenge to get onto MasterChef. I've recorded that and made that public, right?
That's you have. I remember.
Yeah.
So I think you'd have no problem. So I think it's a good thing to have these things. I guess the bigger issue for me is whether it's a compulsion, where it's something that you can't ever turn off, and whether that's a healthy, good thing to have.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
It's not a judgment; it's an open question.
No, and I don't know the answer to it. I mean, look, Tim Ferriss, who I love, and most listeners probably know who Tim Ferriss is, with the 4-Day Week, really, very much followed podcaster and everything else. But he said being busy is a form of laziness in his eyes, and obviously all of his whole ethos is about doing less, and streamlining it and outsourcing and all those different things, life leverage. But being busy is lazy because you're not really focusing on where your attentions need to be. You're filling it with distraction, and actually you could make life better for yourself if you slow down a little bit. And I think there is some truth in that. Certainly for me, not everything I do is necessarily productive. Sometimes I just try and fill the time. I mean, first time I said to Lucy, I actually was really this was literally this morning we had this conversation. I was frustrated this morning because I had for the first time in, I don't even remember, probably over a year, I had a weekend pretty much to myself. So my son had football on Saturday morning, then went for a play date. Football was cancelled, as it turned out. Went for sleepover, so he was gone. My daughter was with me, but she had rehearsals, and then she was dog sitting, so she was away. And Lucy was in London all weekend. And I had a weekend completely to myself. And I said to Lucy, I can't wait, because I'm going to sit down and do the things I haven't done for ages, which are spend some hours on the guitar, just do some chill out, watch the Spurs game, do a few different things, and really have a weekend for me. I was frustrated because I did none of those things, because before I did those things, I thought, before I do that, I'll quickly do some DIY and end up bursting a pipe. I'll quickly do the... So, but I shouldn't have done those things, is the reality. I was frustrated because none of those things were in my plan, but I thought, I can fit that in. I'll just do this as well. I'll just quickly fit... And it turns out another thing was, wasn't on our agenda. We'd agreed we're doing a sorting project at the minute to the whole house, and we'd agreed as a family we'd do this particular space, like a storage cupboard, really. And I thought, well, Lucy's away, it'll be nice. I'll just crack on with it, right? It'll be fine, and it's done for the family. She can come back knowing it's done, and I can do it. Turned into be a 6-hour job. It involved a trip to the tip, all this stuff. And before I knew it, the whole of Saturday was gone. And then the Sunday, I burst the pipe. So I end up doing nothing for me personally. Obviously, it's for the family, whatever. But all the things I'd planned to do went out the window because I thought I'd be clever and try and fit more stuff in, because that's me. Got up super early. Ended up going to bed like 1:30 in the mornings. I was still sorting out tubs and paperwork. And in the end, I paid the cost, because on Monday, I woke up this morning, literally today, really frustrated that for the first time I had this weekend and I've thrown it away. I was angry with myself.
You learn a lesson there, and I'm going back to the Tim Ferriss stuff where you're talking about being busyness, being lazy and stuff. One of the things I do remember, I think it's from that book, and I read it over 10 years ago now, 12 years ago, that really resonated with me, where he was talking about the difference between efficiency and effectiveness, and efficiency being doing things right, and effectiveness doing the right things. And I think that's the difference, is that being busy, sometimes you're being efficient. You'll keep doing things. But being effective is actually that slowing down, taking that step back and saying, of these 10 things, yes, I can knock off 10 things on my task, but actually did I really need to do all 10 of those? It's the whole Pareto principle, right? Where 80% of your efforts yield 20% of your results, and 20% of, or 80% of your results will come from 20% of your, clients or whatever. And so it's like, if you don't sit back and be able to be effective with what you do, you can be efficient all you like, but you're not going to get the results you want. And again, it comes back to that old saying where I think it's like, if you had, 10 hours to chop a tree down, right? You spend the first 9 hours sharpening the sword, sharpening the axe, rather than 10 hours trying to chop that stick. And I guess that's the stepping back. That's the slowing down for those 9 hours, sharpening your axe or your saw, and then focusing for that hour rather than being busy for that 10 hours. I guess
I think the quote that sits with me is the Ferriss Bueller one, my favorite movie growing up. I must have seen it 100 times, but I think I won't get it exactly correct, but he says something along the lines of life moves pretty fast. If you don't sit back and watch it for a little while, it'll pass you by. So I think there's some truth in that. I should listen to that a little bit more. But then there's yings and yangs here. There's Einstein said, life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you've got to keep moving. And I have that bit. I've got to keep moving. Otherwise, for me, if I don't keep moving and I stop and do the thing you've suggested, which is relax, I feel like I'm losing my balance. I feel like I'm falling off my bicycle.
I mean,
so at the moment, I'm just not ready for that. That
does remind me, because when we do our cycle trips, there's a couple of cyclists who can actually stop at those traffic lights and hold their balance.
Yeah, they can. That's not me, by the way.
Yeah, it's not me either. I'm in those clips and I take my clips off. I give it a go. But a couple of guys, they can slow down and keep their balance, which reminds me, are we going to do number 10 at some point in the next
I know. Well, this is one of the things. Again, that's one of the things that I said. Here are some of the benefits of the way there's loads of negatives, I'm sure, and compulsiveness and impulsiveness and things like that. But for me, those cycling trips happened because I went on one trip, which a company organized. I came back and I could do this myself and invited everyone who possibly wanted to come. I put it out there on social media. I'd never met you at that point, and you've come on 9 days.
It wasn't even social media. It was an email from a friend of a friend of a friend.
There you go. So, I was like, I can do this. And suddenly I organized this trip, which you've done a full-on Toastmaster talk on because it was that badly organized probably. But I feel like that's how I learned. And the second year was better, third year was better. And by the end, it was relatively
that's what makes you a good entrepreneur. You just do, right? It's that old Zuckerberg things, right? Move fast and break things, as it were. And that's.
But I also think it's what our friendship's been, what was initially founded on, was your knowledge was in a field of work that I knew nothing or very little about. I found fascinating. So we spent a lot of time together. Me trying to learn from your wealth of knowledge and research, and me was wanting to drink it all up, right? And I found my own journey, my own path, and which led us now to being in good friends many years later. I think if I wasn't me and I would took a different approach, maybe, and we'll never know, you and I wouldn't have struck up that friendship. I wouldn't have been as inquisitive.
I mean, you were very inquisitive, and I was thinking about you at the weekend, because last weekend I was in Barcelona, and I remember we did Valencia to Barcelona, probably, I can't remember whether it was 2015 or 2014, something like that, and maybe 2015. And I remember on that last day when we got to Barcelona, I managed to convince, I think it was you, Lucy, maybe one or two other people to go to that vegan restaurant.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Yeah, Veggie Garden, which is still there. I didn't manage to go to it this time because actually there are tons of other vegan restaurants, and I went to a few of those other ones.
It was really good.
Going there, and I remember you saying like, this is like one of the best meals you had that trip, or maybe even the best meal you had that trip, and how I really appreciated it that you and Lucy, who else was with us? I can't remember who else was with us, but I think maybe one or two other people, but were open enough to kind of do that. And
but also we broke away from the rest of the party to do it, didn't we? There was 20 of us or 15 of us on the trip.
But it wasn't, we didn't all go. I could never, people are not.
Never want to judge something I haven't tried to experience. I think that's probably part of it as well. Or I don't want to judge anything. I don't want to be judgmental, but you know what I mean? Where I want to, it's work for you. Let's go and experience it. And it did open my eyes to it. In fact, I did even try to go vegan for a full month. Didn't work for me, but that's me. All in.
You went all in. It took me about 7 years from starting to drop out dairy to dropping out everything else.
Yeah.
And even then,
I came back and went all in.
You go in one weekend. You were like, right, damn it, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
That's how we're different. That's how we're different. But that's it, right? You're, like I said, you're ready, fire, aim, and I'm ready, aim, fire, something like that. But I'm conscious of time. Actually, I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see anything right now. But I feel like you've got to go and do one of your other projects soon.
I do.
So,
Yeah, I might have
um,
be slightly late to that.
then
Something I'm
I'm
not
going to
good at.
slow down.
Busy person is very rarely punctual. That's definitely me. But they do say if everyone's something done, ask a busy person as well.
That's
and
true.
I'm quite good at that bit as well. So
Yeah, I'll put
I've
my
enjoyed this
to-do
chat.
list out to you then. I'll put my to-do list to you. But I'm going to slow down today. I think I'm going to sit, watch something, put my Normatec recovery, well, not my Normatecs, but my recovery trouser things on, and just chill, and hopefully be in bed by 9:30 for another early start tomorrow. So that's my plan. You'll be having dinner around then, but I'll be.
Yeah, well, I will be for sure. I think the person that suffers the most is I'm fine. I've just got to be more aware, I think, of how it impacts those around me. Actually, that's the harder gig, particularly my wife. I think it sometimes gets a raw deal because she sometimes wants to slow down or do whatever, and I'm always 100 miles
Yin
an hour.
and
So
yang, yin and yang,
yin and yang. I think that's what makes us work.
Oh,
But I've enjoyed it, and look, I'd love to get listeners' views. What do they think? How do you? Are you similar to me, or are you more similar to Harry? Let us know. It's interesting because we're all different.
Balance in your life, and
there's no right or wrong here. It's just who we are, right? It's interesting.
All right. Well, it's been good chat.
Yeah, really good. Really enjoyed it, Harry. Thank you ever so much. Obviously, if you are listening to this, do remember to, if you've enjoyed it, share it with anyone you can. We're still trying to build our audiences as much as possible. It's on YouTube. It's on all the major podcast platforms. Would love to get a review. The reviews are so important for us. They really help boost the rankings and allow more people to find the show. So if you get a minute, please do leave us a review. Be very, very grateful if you could. And let us know what you're thinking, and look forward to bringing the next episode real soon.
We're always keen to hear your thoughts, so do drop us a message on one of our social channels.
Super. All right, Harry, listen, really good to chat, my friend. I will look forward to speaking to you again soon. All the best.
Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.